and is now trained as a humanist, and that's also really similar to the Unitarian Universalist faith in that we're grounded in an agnostic or atheist. It's a self-defined tradition, but it's also really important in this interfaith fight, and Josh has been a wonderful ally to our coalition and a wonderful member, and I'd like for him to tell us a little bit more about what it means to be an atheist on an interfaith panel and why it's important to have a seat at the table.
Thank you, and I'm humbled by this opportunity to take up this precious space today. As an atheist, when I usually speak to crowds, I would start by asking people to take a moment and bow their heads to avoid being hit by any bullets flying in my direction. I am an atheist. I don't believe there is a divine afflatus that is driving me or anyone else. I don't believe I don't believe in God. I'm an out atheist, but more importantly, I am a humanist. And because humanism doesn't focus on what we don't believe, it focuses on what we do believe, and that is respect for other individuals. It is a progressive philosophy of life that affirms our ability and our responsibility to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the greater good of humanity. And so therefore we must, whether we are divinely inspired or not, work on issues such as reproductive issues, all intersectional social justice issues. My humanism drives me to do that. The fact that I'm a human being drives me to do that. I'm sitting on an interfaith panel, and I came today as a humanist. I know that there are many people who are not of faith, who don't necessarily have a voice in certain conversations, but need to have a voice in certain conversations. And that voice needs to be a respectful voice. So I want to try and set the example that says, as a humanist, I respect another person's truth is their truth, just as my truth is my truth. And we need to respect each other, but we also need to speak to each other without mincing words. There are many pro-choice Catholics and other faith groups, but when I hear anti-choice justified or subjugation of women justified, it's almost always through the lens of religion, almost always. So therefore, it is so important for fellow religionists to talk to their faith groups and their leaders, because that is where the legitimacy will come from. If I come from outside the Catholic faith and say, I'm picking on you, and say, this is what is important, this is what I believe, I'm not going to be legitimized necessarily. But if a Catholic person comes to another Catholic person, if I come to another culturally Jewish person, or even a Jewish religious person, because I do associate as a secular humanist Jew, I will have more legitimacy. I have a bit of a background, I have some knowledge. So that's why it's so important to have what I call interphilosophy discussions, because not everyone is of faith. These are different philosophies of life. And so I just renamed it. I hope you'll forgive that, but reclaimed. I think when you speak respectfully, but speak our truth and not mince words, because these issues are far too important. I was asked also what would I say to participants who may have drifted from their faith, and I would just say, first of all, I would offer up AmericanHumanist.org. I would offer up books by Rabbi Greg Epstein, who's a secular humanist rabbi, wrote Good Without God, reading about what humanism is. The Humanist Society.org has classes online that you can take for free, and many of them are social justice issues, classes about social justice and intersectionality of different issues of oppression and prejudice, because that's very important to the humanist movement. And I speak to fellow humanists about that as well. I go to a humanist conference, and I'll be honest, it's a lot of white males there, or white people, and certainly more males. And so that's where I really need to be speaking, just as we need to be speaking to our own faith groups. We really need to be speaking to people who look like us and who believe what we believe. I'm humbled by the opportunity to speak here, but my voice is not necessary here as much as it is talking to, and I'll speak about being a man as well, but talking to my philosophy group, my faith group. So when you know that if you may have drifted from your faith, there's a continuum. You don't necessarily have to go completely away from your faith, as I associate culturally Jewish. and just explore objectively, as Glenn and Rabbi King done, objectively what you believe, and give your faith a conversation with the past and with modernity. Bring it in, if you want to take it with you, if you're proud of it, bring it in to modernity and really objectively examine what you believe, because separating completely from your faith, there's a lot of guilt involved, there's a lot of fear, you could lose your family, there's fear of being wrong, being abused physically or mentally, emotionally, you're losing your community. It's a very difficult thing to do, but really, really look at it objectively and make your faith, if you want to have faith, I think, not about what you believe, but about what you do. And let it inform your action. So, and respect what others believe. I wanted to quote a secular Buddhist here. It says, each generation, his name is Stephen Batchelor, each generation has the right and duty to interpret the teachings that it inherited. In doing so, we may discover meanings in these texts that speak lucidly to our own saeculum, our own generation, but of which the original authors and their successors may have been unaware. So we can explore faith and we can come to different conclusions and talk to our faith sisters and brothers about those conclusions. And people say, well, it doesn't matter if they believe something that isn't true as long as they're not hurting anyone. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it doesn't matter what you believe as long as you're not hurting anyone and as long as you're working toward the betterment of humanity. Because faith, religion can inform, and it can exist in parity and even subordinate to the values of peace and life and honesty and true freedom in secular society. Both people of faith, us, we can be good without God, and that is the short version of humanism, and you can be good with God. But we only have this moment. The past we have no longer. We're not promised the future. I know it's morbid, but we could be gone in the next second. And I live in a world with people who believe differently than I do. And it's my responsibility to support humanity, including them, and they myself, and including myself. And that is this moment I'm living in. So I'm not going to try and convince someone to believe something I'm convinced. I'm going to try and convince them that we need to work for the betterment of humanity by supporting reproductive rights, by taking care of the issues that matter to every single human being. That is what's important. So I did want to quote one other person. Ayaan Hirsi Ali was very much abused, and she was of the Muslim faith. She injected genital mutilation, physical abuse, they attempted to force her to marry someone against her will. And in her original writings, she completely distanced herself, and I'm interpreting her words, so please if I get them wrong, I'm sorry. Ayaan Hirsi Ali said, I have nothing to do with Islam. It's ridiculous. It's subjugating women, and it's horrible. But then she looked, in her later writings, she seemed to try and examine the world around her and say, there are people who are good Muslims, that informs their progressive stance in life, informs their pro-life stance. Their pro-choice stance. And so what she wrote, and I'll quote her, she said, it is possible to free oneself, to adapt one's faith, to examine it critically, and to think about the degree to which that faith is itself at the root of oppression. And I'll end with her book.
What about you? How can we build an intersectional reproductive justice movement?
Well, this is one way, and something that I need to do as a white heterosexual cisgender male is talk to other white heterosexual cisgender males. That's most important for me personally. This space is wonderful. I was asked to be here, but this is not where my voice needs to be heard. It needs to be heard in a group of people who have committed sexual assault, sexual predators, who are white, who are male, right-wing necessarily, who don't understand the issues, and to redefine masculinity, to get away from this, archaic behaviors that are normalized. That's what I need. And I came here today, I was a little reluctant, because when I'm a member of the oppressor group, and the person who's being oppressed asks you to do something because it will help them, then you do it. And so regardless of my male and white fragility, thinking, oh no, I'm not going to be liked, or I'm going to be criticized, or I'm going to say something invidious, and they're not, it doesn't matter. If someone asks you, and usually that ask is behind the scenes, it's giving money, it's giving food, you do it because they're telling you what they need. Don't do what you think they need, do what they need. I'm rambling on. But as far as, so anyway, I very much appreciate being here. I think I want to work with Christian and other organizations as much as I can, not only to speak, but to organize and to take action. And as far as the word ally, I so appreciate when someone gives me that title, because that's not a title you give yourself. You take action. And in the moment, if someone tells you that you're an ally, then you're an ally. And in the next moment, when I walk outside and I'm a white, male, heterosexual, and I don't have to worry about being attacked on the street, and I don't have to worry about being criticized, and I can rest on my damn laurels, I'm no longer an ally. Because other people who are oppressed don't have that same privilege. I am part of the problem just because of how I was born. And males have to admit that. We have to sit together and talk to each other, to our own faith groups, to other faith groups, in a respectful way, but in a very honest way. And so I hope what I've said today has some value. A good idea is to really listen first and put yourself in their shoes and show that you're respecting what they believe, so that then you have an opportunity to say what you believe in a respectful way. Reframe the issue. I know Emily Clancy, who spoke at Planned Parenthood, a day of action, so we're reframing the issue because it's a health issue. That's very important. We're not saying they go to extremes. Your babies know it's a health issue. What is the result you want? The result you want is to have more women and children and people safe, to end the cycles of poverty. By denying equal free access to reproductive health and education, you're not getting those results. If those are the results you want, you're not getting them. And they may not hear, and they may not listen, but if you have a genuine conversation and you do show respect and listen, then likely some of it will get through, I think. Agreed. About Kim said, if we're doing this work, we're doing it properly, it's going to be uncomfortable, it's going to be painful. Otherwise, we're not doing it because we live in a historically patriarchal, misogynistic, sexist, transgender society. We need to change these things. So if someone has lost their family and this is someone you care about, then be there.